Well, Shakita Taylor, thank you so much for joining us from Hattiesburg today. This is our business law class, and we are recording this for our friends at Germantown High School and Ridgeland High School as well, and also for our YouTube channel. And we appreciate you taking some time. I know you're extremely busy, but like we talked about before you get into your background and everything, we have talked about the difference between civil and criminal law. We've had some other attorneys talk about how they deal with certain business things and what's needed in Mississippi as far as running a business, what's needed from a legal standpoint. And then the reasons you might need an attorney, because everybody watches the courtroom dramas, and we all know that is almost nothing of what an attorney actually does. So, and also you're one of a few speakers we've had that I've known over half of my life, because our first job was together at Kroger in Madison.
Right.
Who'd have thought all these years later? But I'll let you have the floor, and you can tell us about how you got to where you are and what all you do and what all is needed with a business attorney.
Okay. So I'm pretty boring. I did all the things that you're supposed to do, like follow the game plan that I'm pretty sure my parents wrote for me when I was like still in the womb. But my background now, after law school, I started working with a big mega firm, made really good money, had really, really nice clothes, and decided that it was not the kind of work for me. It was kind of soul sucking. To just be pushing paper all day. I worked in corporate law at that time. So then I changed trajectories and start working for CPS. That was fun. That was a little too involved for people's lives.
Oh,
yeah.
No. That don't know, CPS is Child Protective Services.
Child Protective Services. And then I worked on the child support division. So all the people who say somebody put them on child support, I'm the somebody. I'm the somebody who did it. And I did that for about 3 years. And it was good. I learned a lot of stuff. I met a lot of really good people, but it just still didn't feel like that was my life's purpose. So then I went and worked for a private corporation. A lot of people know what Dirt Cheap is. Dirt Cheap actually has some really good programs for their employees that provides free in-house counsel for their divorces, child support, wills, estates. All you have to do is work for the company for 6 months and you get access to the legal clinic.
And I know Dirt Cheap has a huge presence in Hattiesburg. I think a lot of people don't realize that, but that's probably their main place. They have the huge distribution center right there in 49.
Right. And it was not only the ones in Hattiesburg, though. I would travel to the Gulf Coast and as far up as Meridian. Wow. And then some of these really tiny towns that I never knew existed. But it was good work. But what I discovered from working for them is that like, I like touching people and like being out and being able to do what I wanted to do. I also found out that I had problems with authority and I was an awful employee. Because I just didn't like the fact that I had to bill hours because you told me to. I felt like I needed to do my job and be able to leave when I was done. Yeah. So I was an awful employee, and my boss recognized that I was an awful employee, and was like, you need to start your own law firm. And I was like, that sounds hard. And she was like, it is, but if you don't, I'm going to fire you. So figure it out. So over the course of about 6 months, I took the leap, started my own law firm. It was terrifying and rewarding. I'm not gonna lie. For the first 2 days, I was my own boss. I sat on my couch and cried because I was like, what the heck am I supposed to be doing? I don't know what to do. I'm gonna be broke. We're not gonna eat food. Like, I don't know. And at that point, I was pregnant. I was 7 months pregnant with my last child. So when nobody gonna hire me? It was not even an option to go get a job somewhere else. So the very first thing that I would just like to tell anybody who wants to start their business, whether you're going to go to law school and be an attorney or you're going to start any other business, is that you have to have the grit to stay when it's hard. Have a good amount of people around you that are able to encourage you, and then also be like, get your butt up. Because it's great when everybody's saying, oh, you're wonderful and you're smart and you're brilliant and you're going to do great things. But when you're sitting on the couch crying, you need that person that's going to say, get up. We're done with this.
Yeah.
You have a question?
Yeah, I was gonna talk a little bit about, in this class and in the previous semester, we talked a little bit about the workplace laws that applies to every person that works in the state of Mississippi and in the United States. So how important is it for, even, obviously everybody's not going to be an attorney, but it's important. How important is it to know your rights as an employee in Mississippi so you're not screwed out of some money, you're not screwed out of some doctor bills, or, I tell these females all the time, you need to know that you're entitled to maternity leave. So, so what are some of those things they need to know just from your legal history that you've seen that has come back to haunt people, maybe because they weren't educated on their rights?
The biggest thing that people need to understand, whether you're the employer or the employee, is Mississippi's an at-will state. Number one. So your boss can walk in one day and say, I don't like your shirt, and you're fired. However, there are some protections, the EEOC protections, which are employment equal opportunity. It has to do with race, age, gender, sexual orientation. Some of those protected classes that if they walk in and say, you're fired because you're Black, then you have a lawsuit. Or you're fired because you're old, or you're fired because you're young, then you have a lawsuit. But I get a lot of calls and people for wrongful termination. And in Mississippi, that's very difficult to prove because it's at will. Yeah. So that's one of the things, either as an employer or employee, that they need to know about. The second thing that I get the most calls about is workplace sexual harassment and sexual assault. I'm here for a good joke all the time, but sometimes a good joke can end you up in court. So being very careful about those things.
And it's not just the person you say it to. You could be overheard by a customer and be reported, and then that could cause you to have a lawsuit.
Correct. And so lots and lots of issues when it comes to sexual harassment and sexualizing things in the work environment. But those would be the top two things when it comes to employment laws. That would be things that they would want to keep on top of mind.
Yeah, and also and just the simple stuff too, like what is allowed to be taken out of your paycheck, and making sure you're paid overtime if you work more than 40 hours and you're an hourly employee. An employer can't make you come in over the 40 hours when you're an hourly employee, not salary, obviously. So when you're over 40 hours a week and you're an hourly employee, they have to pay you that time and a half.
So one of the biggest things that almost every employer, when you're first hired, will give you a handbook. Nobody reads it. But they are required by law to state in there how you're paid, what happens. And the best advice I can give anybody is, if you don't read it, save it. Of course, you should read it, but if you don't, just save it. Nowadays, a lot of employers, you just go through and click. And so they say, do you want to download this document? Just push yes, download the document. So when something comes up or you have questions, you don't have to go and ask the HR person, who may or may not have your best interests at heart. They're hired and paid, and the company pays them. So they're looking out for their company, not necessarily you.
Absolutely.
When it comes to your paycheck and things of that nature, another issue that I have is, who can take a judgment out or garnishment out on my check? Yeah. And that is a very good question. And the law varies on who the who is. Remember when I used to work for DHS, I regularly grabbed money out of people's checks. And they're just different laws for different kinds of garnishments. So if you do have a garnishment, number one, your employer cannot fire you for that.
Yep.
But number two, you need to make sure that the garnishment is valid, and you have the right to ask your employer to produce the information of why they're garnishing your check.
Absolutely. And it's like I tell these young people all the time, everybody wants to chase the check, but you need to make sure you're not getting screwed out of your money. And I think that's a common mistake that a lot, even old people make, that they're not paying attention. And I think people have cost themselves money in the past just by not knowing their rights and knowing what applies to them as employees. Now, one thing
before we move on, I do want to add one thing about the whole garnishment and what's happening with your check. If you get sued, if someone brings some paper to your house and tells you are being sued, go to court. Always go to court. Always go to court. Because sometimes people get these garnishments and the company didn't have legal grounds, but because you didn't show up, they were granted a default judgment. You don't have to worry about hiring a lawyer or doing all that. Always go to court.
Yeah. And yeah, especially on those small claims, you don't need to hire an attorney on that. You just need to be there, and you have that right. Because unless there's if I'm a legal novice, but unless, if I'm not mistaken, everything that happens in a courtroom, with the exception of something involving a juvenile, is public record. So you have the right to all of that.
Yes, generally that's true. Yes.
So, and now one thing, something else I want to talk about, and I know you deal with this a lot too, is contracts, legal documents, things of that nature, not just for businesses, but for individuals. Because one thing I've said in here is that you can make an agreement or a handshake, or, you can put it on God, whatever you want to do. None of that matters if it is not in a legally binding document. So why is it important to, you hear all the time, you need to read what you sign, read what you sign. Why is it important to know what you're signing, especially when it comes to anything business, family, or contract related?
So if you don't write anything down, you remember nothing else that I say. Ignorance of the law is not a defense. So if you sign something and then later on you say, I didn't know what that meant, or I didn't read it, the judge is going to look at you and say, ignorance of the law is not a defense. Put another way, you should have read it. And if you didn't, it's on you. If you read it and didn't understand it and you signed it, it's on you. So the best thing you can do with contracting is, if you do not understand, is ask. And then refuse to sign anything that you don't understand or you don't agree with. In Mississippi and most anywhere else, you can contract for whatever you want to contract for, as long as it's not immoral or unethical. So a lot of people assume that if it's in the contract, it must be the way things are done legally. That is not true. I can write in my contract that at the end of this call, you owe me $100 paid in nickels. And if you don't pay, if you send me a cash app, I can sue you. Because that's what I decided to contract, and you assumed that I would take just $100 anyway, but that's not what I want. I like nickels. And so it's things like that, that gets a lot of people in trouble. In Mississippi, a lot of contracts require arbitration. Yeah. And that requirement of arbitration, that's not something that's written into the law. That's what I decided I want my company to do. And then a lot of companies go a bit further and say, I require arbitration and you have to pay for it. Wow. So just be very clear and conscious of what you're signing. When you're having business things with friends and family, it is very easy to be like, oh, they're good for it. They're good for it. I'm a whole lawyer and I got a whole law firm. And if I agree to do something that somebody didn't write in writing, they'd be like, oh, well, I thought you meant, I get burned every time. So don't do it.
Absolutely. Now, and before I get to, and I got some great questions we're going to get to, but also, obviously I got all 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th graders with me right now, but how important is it as they get older to understand the importance of when they want to enter into a marriage or they want to have kids, to know, if there's a divorce or any type of child support, you can say whatever you want, but you have to go by what the law says and the importance of a prenuptial agreement. So I know you do a lot of family law. So what is it important? Obviously we're not advocating for divorce here, but why is it important to protect yourself going into any type of marriage as you get older?
So do you want my legal answer or my personal answer?
Whatever you want to offer.
All right, so I'll give you both. Generally speaking, You only need a prenuptial agreement if you have assets before you're married. So I am now an old lady. I got a whole bunch of stuff and some kids and some more stuff in a house. So if I were to get married, I would need a prenuptial agreement because I already have stuff that doesn't involve another person. Okay. And so I would need to protect those assets to make sure, not that I don't trust this person or don't love this person, but to make sure that the thing that I built on my own remains independently mine. Now, in regards to getting married, I did get married when I was 21, and I have jack, nothing. I don't own anything. My bank account was in negative. And the person I married didn't have jack. His bank account was in a negative. So we did not necessarily need a prenup because we did not have anything independent that we needed to protect and keep independent. Now, in Mississippi, whether you have a prenuptial agreement or not, if you marry someone and build things together, regardless of your prenuptial agreement, you could be entitled to split those things or share those things for a certain percentage. Not necessarily 50-50, but for example, if I married someone and bless his heart, he decided to come work at my office, I have no idea why he would decide to do that. And I didn't pay him a paycheck. He just came, he answered the phones, did whatever, and we were divorced later. He would have a really good claim against me for a portion of my business.
Absolutely.
Because he put in work equity, sweat equity that he was not paid for. Now, I could avoid that if I have a prenuptial agreement and if I pay him a paycheck. Then he's an employee. He's not building he's not building anything for my business. Yeah. That answer your question?
Yeah, and I think it's important because I know obviously when they're 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, you're not really thinking about all that. But like you said, you can't be ignorant of it and then not expect to get bit in the butt later, because I'm sure you see it all the time. And again, I think a lot of people think prenup, oh, infidelity. It's not always the case. Like you said, if you've built something on your own, you want to protect that, especially if you have kids. You want them to be entitled to that and not somebody else that comes in a later relationship. And I just think the importance of that cannot be diminished, that it is extremely important to know the legal proceedings of that in Mississippi, because it doesn't matter what's right or wrong. It matters what the law says.
Especially this age kids, like when you and I were this age, like we didn't have anything, but nowadays, like kids are able to create their own businesses on social media. Kids are going viral on TikTok, doing all these influencer things, which I don't understand how you go viral making makeup, but you do what you do, boo. Like, I'm here for it. But all these things, so it's very likely that you could be in 11th or 12th grade and have this business that may not have exploded yet, but it's on its way. So if you marry young or marry after college, then it would be in your best interest to have a prenuptial agreement. And prenuptial agreements, yes, if you have lots of assets, get a lawyer involved, get one made. But at its basics, it's just a contract.
Wow.
It's just a contract. And sitting down with the person who you love, be like, "Boo, I love you. Your eyes are so beautiful. You can't have my stuff." And just having that very candid conversation up front, then it won't be a surprise later.
Yeah. Well, I do have some great questions I want to get to from the students. This first one is Jamiria Luckett. She's in 10th grade. And I know this because when I first met you and I was 19 and you were 16, you told me then you wanted to be an attorney. But she asked, what made you want to pursue a career as an attorney?
My parents brainwashed me. No, so there were just a lot of things that I was naturally good at. I enjoyed reading, I enjoyed writing, and I have always been a rebel without a cause. Like if there was someone sitting at the lunch table by themselves, I'm like, why she sitting by herself? Like, what we gonna do about this? Like, for even when there was no fight to fight, I was finding one. Yeah. So that's kind of how I knew that's the direction I was going. However, I would say that if you're considering a career as an attorney, you need to like to read. And you need to be able to articulate yourself in writing. On all the How to Get Away with Murder, I love Annalise Keating, but boo, 99% of the time, you're not arguing a case, you are writing a brief. I put it up. Like I just finished writing an 102-page brief to the Supreme Court of Mississippi. It was not fun, but it was a necessary thing to do for a client. Yeah. So reading and writing, you have to enjoy those two things. If you do not, you will be a miserable attorney.
Yeah, it's not all the stuff, even though we all love the courtroom dramas, that is such a minuscule part of what attorneys actually do. And because I know some attorneys never even go to court. So right. it's not the how to get, and I love the show too, but that is completely this is Anastasia Brown. She's a junior, and she asked, what mistakes have you made while being an attorney, and how have you solved those?
Oh, whoa. Okay, so the worst mistake that I made that was a personal thing was believing that any error was fatal. So when I was new on my own, I felt like I had to be perfect and not miss a deadline, not do anything. And if I did, I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm not cut out for this. I need to quit. Somebody's going to sue me. And I just had all of this anxiety and angst. And what I really just had to do is give myself grace and talk to some other more seasoned attorneys. And they'd be like, oh, I do that all the time. And I'm like, but like, you've been doing this for 30 years. And so the biggest mistake that I made personally is believing that I had to be perfection. Once I start being more open and honest with my clients and stop trying to do the model of what someone else was doing, but just being me and saying, look, this is what I am going to do. This is what I'm not going to do. And don't call me on Saturday because I'm not answering the phone. They start respecting that. And this became a better case. Now, as far as legally, the biggest mistake that I made actually is recorded in the Supreme Court. Is that there is a case that I had and I missed a motion deadline. And I did file afterwards, and the other attorney fought it. And the judge was like, sorry, you missed it. So I got to court. We had a trial. At the trial, the information and the motion that I filed, the other attorney's client testified to it. So the information that the judge told me, nope, you can't get that in, got into the record. And based on that testimony, the judge ruled in my favor. Wow. So the other attorney appealed to the Supreme Court and says, no, that information can't come in because Shakita Taylor didn't do what she's supposed to do when she's supposed to do it, which was true. But then the Supreme Court says, nah, but your client said it, so it came in. Yeah. So the Supreme Court actually affirmed the judge. So my mistake that I made didn't hurt my client. But that's probably the biggest mistake I made.
I don't know if that'll happen again, but that is pretty lucky. Now, this is a good question. This is Miles Woodard. He's a junior, and he asked, when dealing with a child custody case, do you sometimes feel bad for the losing side?
No.
Wow.
No. I'm completely emotionally uninvolved with my clients. This is work.
I got you. And I know that's tough, but I think that's important, but that's got to be hard.
It's not. There's exactly one case in my entire legal career that I still lose sleep over. And that has to do with a criminal case. My client was a 13-year-old in big boy jail, accused of, I don't know if I can say, assaulting his little brother. And that case is the only case that I was ever emotional because there was no good answer for him. It was either commit him to a mental health facility or keep him in big boy jail, which neither of them really helped him. But no, this is work. This is like, think of it this way. If anybody in the room has a job at McDonald's, Chick-fil-A or whatever, when you go home, you don't be thinking about how many chicken nuggets are left. Like, you're not at work no more. Same concept.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. This is Marion Bolden. He's a junior, and he asked, have you ever reviewed a case that you thought would be too much of a challenge?
Yes. It's usually not the case, it's usually the client.
Ooh.
So one of the benefits that I have that I work for myself is I have consultations. I tell people that the reason I'm consulting with them is so that I can learn more about their legal issue and advise them. That's not all the way true. I want to know how crazy they are. Because in family law, you deal with a lot of emotions. And if a person is not emotionally stable, quote unquote, crazy, I just say no. And I just have a list of other attorneys. I say, hey, I don't think I'm going to be a good fit. And so here are some of my colleagues who might be a better fit.
Yeah.
And send them away. But I don't think there's ever been like the actual elements of a case. It's mostly the people.
And I can definitely understand that. Korea Baker, she's a sophomore, and she asked, how do you stay focused and balance the different areas of the different cases you handle?
So I have a staff of people that work for me, and it's like I just borrow their brains. So through the beginning of somebody calling, making an appointment, doing all that, I have no idea who they are. Then I come, I have a consultation with them, and I just type out whatever we talk to. And when they leave out of the door, I won't remember them if I see them in Walmart later, because I just see so many people and talk to so many people. But at the point where you hire me, then I start relating certain things. I may not remember that your kid is allergic to peanuts, but I will remember that you have 3 children, you want them to live with you, and their dad likes to smoke weed on the side. Like, so usually it's relational that I remember certain things. And this is the best analogy I can use. It's kind of like when you're studying for a test and you can't remember anything, but you can't get the words of "they don't talk about Bruno" out of your head. It's that I just find something that is unique to that person to link them with.
Oh, yeah. And I think that'd be the easiest way to do it. Now, this is a good question. I had this a lot in my entrepreneurship class. This is Martavius Johnson. And he asked, is it hard focusing on the business aspect of running a business when you're an attorney?
Yes. And so I hire a CPA.
There you go.
Regardless if you're going to be a lawyer, if you're going to have your own business of any type, there are a couple things you need to do. Number one, what we talked about before, get your contracts together. Number 2, get your money right. And number 3 is, get the IRS off your back. And so how you do number 3 is different depending on what kind of business you use. Yep. Some people don't need a CPA. You might just need a bookkeeper, or your mama might be really good at keeping track of everything. So you get her to keep track of all the things and all the money and where it's going and where it's coming. But if you try to run a business and do all the things yourself, you will drown.
Yeah. And I think the trend now, there's more and more businesses out there that do business to business services. Mm-hmm. And I think, a lot of companies could stay out of, a lot of small businesses could really help themselves by utilizing that instead of trying to do everything themselves. They're so worried about cutting costs, but you're going to find yourself getting fined for breaking a tax law for messing that up.
And when it comes to cutting costs, so I'm part of a group that's called Women Business Owners of the Pine Belt. And so what we do is we trade services. I don't actually pay my CPA money. I handle her contracts. I've done some legal stuff for her. And so I invoice her and she invoices me. Wow. And so it's a mutually beneficial program. So when you are making friends, making connections and things, connect with people who you can help and can help you, because it goes both ways. And then we develop friendships and relationships to anytime someone comes to her office and they need an attorney for something I do, I'm always the person she sends them to. And so I've been practicing on my own now for 9 years, and I'm a 100% referral business. Wow. You won't see a billboard or an ad or anything. It's 100% referral.
That's awesome. And I know you have a website, but that's just, that's not, other than a small hosting fee, that's not a whole lot of advertising dollars. Now, this is the last one from the students. This is a Kale Middleton. and he's a junior, and he asked, are there any regrets that you have walking away from your job?
No. So when I first started out on my own, the biggest regret I had was health insurance, because you don't have to worry about this yet, but it is expensive as a business owner for health insurance. Let me write down for you how expensive. For me, my then husband, and my 3 children, it was going to be $2,200 a month for Cobra health insurance, because my child had pre-existing asthma. I had some pre-existing things. $2,200 in health insurance. This is in case you get sick. So what I did, and what a lot of attorneys around here do, is I have a part-time job. So I work for the city of Hattiesburg as a public defender. So if you're in Hattiesburg and you steal something from the Walmart, I'm gonna be the person to represent you. Don't steal nothing from the Walmart. They got cameras everywhere. Go to Target.
I don't have one in Hattiesburg, that's why.
I'm just joking. And so part of my contract negotiations with them is that I would take a lower rate of pay in exchange for full healthcare benefits.
That's smart.
And so, and that is what 90% of the attorneys around here have some kind of part-time job, part-time prosecutor, part-time defense attorney. And the reason we do that is it just makes dollar sense.
Yeah, I actually have a friend that's an attorney here in Jackson, and she does well as an attorney, but for the same reason, she works part-time at Dillard's just to get the benefits. And I think she likes having the discount too to get the makeup. But at the same time, that was the reason she did that. But I just have a couple more. The first, and I forgot to mention this. Here's one I always want to ask, especially somebody that does a lot of communication and speaking in their profession. Because these kids want to get mad at me all the time because I make them present. I don't grade them hard on it. I just want them to get used to communicating and speaking to a group of people. As somebody that does that for a living, how important is it to have those speaking skills and communication skills in the business world?
Okay, I wish I could see your students right now. So like I could look into their eyes, be like, listen. A lot of times you are going to step in the room if you are Black, if you are female, if you are Latina, whatever. And as soon as you step into the room, all of the odds are against you. And the way that you get back in front of the line is you open your mouth. And when you open your mouth, you dispel all the myths, all the things. For my entire life, I've been told, you talk like a white girl. And maybe I do, but forget you. So for me, it wasn't that I had to change the way that I speak. I was a military brat. I moved around different cultures, different people. So I was naturally just a little bit different. I'm not telling you have to change how you speak. I'm saying that when you speak, you need to be able to communicate effectively and efficiently. Is because if you already walk in the room and the odds are against you, then you open your mouth and you cannot communicate your thoughts and ideas clearly, you've now moved all the way to the back of the line. I wish I could say that we live in America and the American dream is true, and none of those things are real, but they're real. Like even for my life, I've been practicing for 13 years. I've been on my own for 9 years. And tomorrow when I go to Forest, Mississippi, I'm going to be the only Black person in the room. And sometimes when I'm the only Black person, I get a question, be like, do you need help? Like, I could not possibly be there to represent anybody. And then the icing on the cake that kind of just makes my day is that probably about 85% of my clientele is not Black. And so when I'm representing these people, when I'm doing that, the reason why they're hiring me is because when they talk to me, they realize that, oh, crap, I was about to cuss, I'm sorry. They're like, oh, wait, maybe she is the smartest person in the room right now. And so you need to, number one, open your mouth, communicate effectively. And two, don't be afraid of being the smartest person in the room.
Absolutely.
Own it.
Absolutely. Well, I just got a couple more, and we thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule. And I got one funny and one serious.
Okay.
The funny one is these kids love making fun of me, rightfully so. But as somebody that's known me for 21 years, how can you say that can you say at all that I've changed since when you met me when you were in high school?
No.
Yeah, because
So,
I just,
okay. So when I met Greg at Kroger, I want to say at some point he may have been like a supervisor of me. I don't know. But I didn't take you as such. But he was just a really nice guy. And he's always been concerned of making sure that the right thing happened and that, for lack of a better word, justice prevailed. And as what I've seen over the years through Facebook and just keeping communication, is that still the kind of guy he is that making sure that right is right and wrong is wrong.
well, I appreciate that. It's never been about me, but I just wanted them to see the reality of the possibilities and knowing the knowledge that's needed. But before we go, and I ask everybody the same kind of question, but and even more so than my other guests is, you went to Madison County School graduate, 2003, Madison Central. And they don't believe me when I say at Madison Central, even then, we did not have the stuff that they have here at Velma Jackson. So they're extremely blessed to have the type of ACT prep they have now, the technology they have now that me and you never had the access to. But yet both of us, especially you, and you just talked about, you just hit on this a lot. You are living the dream down there. You are crushing it. You are a successful Black business owner, successful Black attorney in Mississippi. And like you said, a lot of times you're the only Black person, a lot of times you're the only female. But yet, despite coming from Mississippi and growing up Black in Mississippi, like everybody that's watching with me now is, how did you overcome that and become successful? And what can they do, even if they don't want to be an attorney, to be just as successful as you?
For me, my race and gender were a non-issue. I made it a non-issue. It was an issue for other people, but it wasn't an issue for me. I knew exactly who I was and what I wanted. And so if you know who you are, then you don't have to worry about anyone else defining you.
There you go.
And so when other people came and they were asking, oh, what about this? And aren't you afraid? Like, I just look at them like this, like, huh? Like sometimes when people be like, you're the only Black person in the room, I'd be like, really? Like,
That feels like me the other way around.
Right. And just not give it any energy. So know who you are and stand on that. For lots and lots of years in high school and college, I was the oddball out. Now I'm the sought after. So owning your weird oddities, girl, that's gonna make you some money. Just do it.
Well, again, thank you so much. And that was some great insight about the state of Mississippi laws and a great inspirational words from you, and everything you get, you deserve. It just couldn't happen to a better person. I'm just glad to have known you for so long, and great Mississippi attorney. If you need some legal advice, ShakitaTaylorConsulting.com is where it's at. And again, we thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule. I hope the weather here doesn't catch you down there.
I hope not. One thing I wanted to add is that you can share my email address with your class.
Okay.
I know most of them are up there, but if they have a cousin, auntie somewhere and they're in the area for the summer, they're more than welcome to come to the office, shadow me for a couple days. We do some internships, and it might bore them to death because they're not in court every day, but they'll learn some good stuff.
Yeah, and we'll definitely share that with our Germantown and Bridgeland friends as well. That'll see this later.
All right, y'all have a good day.
All right, well, thank you, my friend. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.